Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'm going to discuss the Horten 229, which is currently on offer in the World of Warplanes premium shop. So here's my Horten 229, resplendent in a special livery, which I'll touch on again later in the video. And just for fun, I thought I'd roughly recreate a famous World War II photograph of a prototype Horten. What you're going to see next is some numbers, not too many, don't run away, where I compare the Horten to certain aircraft, but what that comparison will show is that the Horten is a bit of an unusual beast, and you should treat it as such. So let's have a look at those numbers. And here we are. Let me explain how this spreadsheet works quickly. The Horten 229 is in columns C and D. Further aircraft in this comparison also occupy two columns each. So for instance the TA152 is in column E and F. Down the side we have the important attributes from the Hangar UI, and all the information from there is summarized in this table here. For the purposes of the comparison, all the aircraft were reduced to their stock configuration. Ordnance where it was available was stripped off, so was equipment. The pilot was sent back to the barracks, but bear in mind that all the modules are the top modules. Okay, so let's look at gun armament. And as you can see, the cumulative DPS, with the exception of the heavy, as you would expect and hope, is very similar to most of the aircraft in this comparison. 420, 430 for the Su-9, similarly for the I-260, and the J-8M is 440. Very quickly, just a bit of an idiosyncrasy in the game. The Horten achieves its 420 cumulative DPS with two 30mm Mk103 cannons. Well, the TA152 does the same as well, 420 DPS, but it does it with three of the same cannons. It's not the first time the World of Warplanes team have tweaked an otherwise identical item to make it flat out better on a different aircraft. Why, you might ask, is the rating only 31 in that case for the Horten 229 when it's 35 for the TA152? Well, the statistics for overheating and cooling are hidden, and I'm going to guess, though I haven't proved it, that the Horten has more of an issue with its overheat and cooling cycles than does the TA152. And that's worth bearing in mind because you can take steps to improve that by selecting bonus characteristics on the equipment that you use, if those characteristics are available. Let's take a look at the ranges. The Horten 229 has a range of 3,115 feet. That's definitely in sniper territory. You can destroy aircraft long before they can ever engage you with their own armament in many cases. It's the same as the TA152, but the exceptions here, the Su-9 and the I-260, don't go head on them because they probably will start damaging you quite a bit before you can damage them. The J8M is not a sniper, it's here for purposes of comparing speed, and the ME262, interestingly, is definitely not a sniper. And there's an interesting point to be made here. The ME262 is much more robust, as you would expect, than the Horten 229, which means that it can get within range of bombers and therefore within range of their rear gunners and take the punishment whilst it deals out its own. You don't have to do that with the Horten, and in fact you shouldn't do that with the Horten. If you're going to engage a bomber from behind, particularly if it's a human bomb with a recognisably good rear gunner, try and match the speed and don't get any closer than about 3,000 feet. That way you can minimise the damage from the rear gunner and still have a good chance of sniping out the bomber. So, having talked about survivability, you can quickly see that if here the Horten, with the exception of the J8M, which you just don't want to and can easily avoid having it happen, don't want to be hit in, the Horten's the worst of the aircraft in this particular comparison. When it comes to airspeed, it's rather faster than its direct competitor, the TA152, and this definitely means that it can be built as a high-speed, high-energy fighter. The Russian multi-roles aren't built for that type of engagement, and therefore their speeds are much lower, of course. Don't be fooled by the J8M. On paper it's slower, but once it's boosting, and you do want to be boosting in any engagement, well, particularly after you've engaged an aircraft, it's a heck of a lot faster. And as you would expect, the Heavy is also faster than the Horten, but interestingly the figures are not massively in favour of the Heavy. If you get behind a Heavy, even if it's boosting away, you're going to probably be able to stay with it long enough to snipe it out at range. One thing of note, 590 miles per hour dive speed is excellent, and that offers you an escape method from many aircraft. If you get engaged from behind, point the nose down, engage your boost, hope that you have engine cooling as well, and try and dive away from them. You'll need to know your aircraft. You're not going to be able to employ that tactic, for instance, against the J8M, or indeed the ME262 and many other Heavies. But fighters, you stand a chance of escaping. When it comes to manoeuvrability, however, the Horten is a bit of a sluggard. The rating here is nearly as the worst in the comparison. Only the J8M is worse, and the J8M, by no stretch of the imagination would you even think about turning in it. That actually isn't true for the Horten if you build it for manoeuvrability, and we'll touch on that later in the video as well. But on the base figures you can see that it's not spectacular. And one thing to note, if you happen to encounter a Heavy player who's opted to build his, for instance, ME262 for manoeuvrability, and of course bear in mind that the Japanese Heavies are already very manoeuvrable, so more of the same will apply in that case, and you build the Horten for speed, you're probably going to find that it's quite difficult to outturn a Heavy, which means that if you do engage a turn fight with such an aircraft, it's going to be a long time before you shoot it down. Probably too long. You will likely get engaged by something else that shoots you down instead. When it comes to altitude, we can see that the Horten has excellent altitude performance and truly does belong in the high energy fighter class if that's how you choose to build it. It's very similar even to the ME262. The J8M is a bit of an outlier here, and that just illustrates that the J8M is truly a vertical up and down fighter. So that's the numbers. Let's go and have a look at the first build. So here we are back on the airstrip tarmac, and let me show you the build that you're going to see in the first battle. And it's a speed build. So let's just quickly step through the equipment. Gun sight, that will be common to every build on the Horten. I can't imagine that you would want to put anything else in other than the gun sight, because you need to get those guns as accurate as possible, and you'll need to do that with your pilot skills as well. Polished skin for speed, uprated engine for speed. Engine armour protection, that's really important in this particular build because the Horten does tend to have its engine shot out quite easily, and if you have a fighter that's built for speed without an engine, i.e. no speed, you're in trouble. On the gas operated action, I've opted therefore to pump out the shots as quickly as possible, but I've reassembled this piece of equipment even though I haven't calibrated it in order to get the 15% extra cooldown rate. I did mention that you will want to do everything you can to control the overheat cooling cycle of these guns, and it even comes down to reassembling at the cost of tokens to get this 15%. I've begun to train a pilot for the Horten. It's my BF-109B pilot, and that runs counter to what you would want to do with most premiums, where you would want to use them as crew trainers to train crew for your regular tech tree aircraft. Now, it has crossed my mind, and I think it probably would be viable to train your heavy fighter pilots in the Horten 229 and not your fighter pilots. But in my case, I've started to retrain my BF-109B pilot, and what we have on there is Engine Guru 1, Marksman 1 and 2, really important again for the guns. These are high priority skills to get, and Aerodynamics Expert again to increase the effect of the equipment on the speed. So probably what you'd be doing is going something like Aerodynamics Expert, Engine Guru 1 and Marksman 1. The order is up to you. I would probably suggest Marksman 1, Aerodynamics Expert and Engine Guru 2. As you have skill points come available, you probably want to put them on fire resistance, because the Horten does tend to catch fire fairly easily. And then when you have another skill point, as I've done here, I've put it on battle tested, and when I have another 3.4 million crew experience, and Therefore, another extra point, I will take off Battle Tested and probably put on Engine Guru 2. Everything in order to increase that speed. Having done all that, is it enough? I'm not convinced personally. We have been able to boost the stock figure of 70 rating for airspeed up to 82. That's pretty significant. And with calibration, and if you happen to have experimental or special project equipment available for either of these two slots, the airframe and the engine, maybe you're looking at something of the order of 85 through to 90. And that's really quite quick. But how many of us have got the special project equipment? I suspect that once I've done everything I can under this particular configuration, this will come out at around 84, 85. Well, considering my ME262 has got 94, you can figure on the Horten 229 not being quite fast enough in some cases, particularly against Tier 9 jets. And I've even had a KI-162-1 chase me, admittedly in horizontal flight. I was unable to dive because I was already fairly low altitude, for long enough to push me so far from an important sector that I needed to capture that I lost the battle. However, if you're really good at high energy fighting and handling speedy aircraft that aren't that manoeuvrable, and bear in mind the manoeuvrability figure has now gone down from a rating of 42 down to 40, then this may be the kind of build for you. So here we are on the Cold Peak map. It's the Walls of Stone variant, which is the familiar 5 spots of a die configuration with a central command centre, 2 flanking mining plants and 2 flanking garrisons. The command centre is both strategically important and tactically important because of its position in the centre, and therefore whereby it provides access to the other sectors. Not only does it convey the normal 3 resources every 5 seconds, but it also calls in bomber flights to attack enemy ground targets, and depending on in which order the sectors fall, that may mean that the bomber flights are heading towards enemy mining plants. Quite useful. The mining plants, of course, convey the standard 3 resources every 5 seconds, and additionally they provide 80 resources every 2 minutes. And the garrisons are there to provide 3 resources every 5 seconds. It's quite rare on this map for the garrisons to become the tipping points, so all of your efforts should be focused on capturing the command centre and at least one of the mining plants, if not both of them. If we take a look at the order of battle, we can see that I have my Horten 229, and just a reminder, this is the speed build, and on the opposing side we have an ME262 unspecialised, and everybody else is bots. It was midday. I tried to find a better battle. The game said no. So what I was weighing up as I went into this battle was whether to go to the command centre or possibly fly to the far-flung mining plant and try and interfere with its capture. And since there was only one human player on the enemy side, in an ME262 to boot, unspecialised as well, I decided the command centre was the most important sector for me at the start of the battle. So immediately I gain altitude, and then I begin to have a look down. And as you can see, the altitude performance of the Horten 229 is excellent. Strongly recommend that you use this as a weapon against enemy aircraft. And the ME262 appears immediately in front of me. Clearly it's got better DPS than I have, so I evade it, and then I employ my speed build to chase after it. It's already taken a lot of damage. It doesn't take me very long to finish it off, and most conveniently a bomber appears in front of me, so I shoot at that too. And down that goes. And if you can aim the guns, and bear in mind I've got Marksman 1 and Marksman 2 on these guns, plus the gun sight, they are devastating. Rest assured, there'll be plenty of occasions when you're aiming and you don't hit. At least, that's true if you're like me. So, as this is a speed build, you can see I choose not to turn after the Tempest immediately. I wait until it's about 4,000 feet away, and then turn to re-engage. And assessing other threats, I decide to make sure that I'm not going to get shot down from the side. Finally pick a target that's far enough away for me to land several shots on. And as we engage this, watch how many times I fire. And that was a volley of 3. That's about as much as I can manage without the guns becoming excessively overheated. And bear in mind, as I mentioned previously, I have done everything I can to improve the cooldown rates of these. If you start firing 4 or 5 shots, you're going to find that your DPS crashes through the floor, and that makes you puts you in a bad position. Even so, if you watch the indicator carefully, I am often guilty of starting to fire a second volley of 3 shots too early. I tend not to let the guns cool down before I start firing again. So we took out the ME-262, who was at the command centre again. And at this point I'm keeping a very careful eye on the mining plant to make sure that we're going to take ours fairly soon, since we're actually equal in numbers of sectors, but the enemy has the advantage of their plant. I spot the ground attackers starting to stream out of the plant. Meat and drink. Well, meat and drink if you can hit them. For the Horten 229, provided you're wary of the tail gunners. And we have now taken our plant, so I'm satisfied we're in a reasonable position. Some other teammate finishes off that particular ground attacker, so I chase after the first one that I saw. And you can see the speed here. I soon catch up with it, even though it was at a relatively far distance. 3 shot volleys. Couldn't resist an extra one there, and I move on. And since I'm flying towards a multi-roll, I leave the ground attacker for a moment and take that one. With the Horten, you're often doing this. You don't necessarily finish off aircraft by turning around to shoot them a second time. You simply fly on and find other aircraft that are in front of you to shoot. And in that case I had 2. And the ground attacker is still there, so I do finish him off. And the Tempest obligingly flies in front of me nice and slowly, so I can also shoot him down. Looking around for more targets, checking that we're still 3 sectors to 2 up. We are. And there you saw, slightly difficult to hit the VB head on for me there. And it's quite a mobile heavy. I took a bit of a chance turning, but it worked out for me. Ground attacker is nearly dead, and I just make sure of it. And light fighters, if you do manage to catch them with a couple of volleys, are likely to blow up there and then. That's definitely the boom component of this aircraft. Fly away from the furball, let it thin out and disperse slightly, and then come back and select a target, which is another ground attacker. The Winged Legend goes through. I fly away from what's pursuing me. I can see a ground attacker at a garrison. That affords me 3 volleys, and then another volley set of 3 as well for some more good experience in terms of hit points, which translate into experience, of course. And I think that's the second time I've exploded the Yak 9U in the last couple of minutes. Swinging round, having checked that it was safe to do so, and I decide to chase the Tempest. And as you can see, if you have Marksman 1 and Marksman 2 plus the gun sight, you are able to snipe effectively. And I'm not even using the sniper mode. I don't like it. Nice dodge by the IL-10 behind the mountain. Doesn't save him. And now we're just looking to finish off the battle by taking as many hit points as we can. I'm underneath the B-32, so I don't mind approaching it, but had I been level with it, I would have probably tried to keep my distance. And given that it's a slow bomber, that exposes you to the risk of being pounced upon by other aircraft. But it's better that than being continuously hit by its turrets. As I mentioned, this is quite a fragile aircraft. Didn't quite finish the Tempest there. Wait until it's definitely flown away. And as it turned out, if I had killed the Tempest there, this would probably have been a 5 chevron battle. But still, quite a nice crop of medals and a decent personal points tally. So let's take a look at the results of this particular battle. As we can see from the middle, it's a 4 chevron battle or a grade 2 fighter. 364,015 credits or silver if you prefer, of which about 121,000 were for the premium account bonus. If we take a look at expenses, we can see there were none because the aircraft wasn't shot down, and I used prepaid consumables. 8,328 experience, again with a premium account bonus and also a first win of the day bonus applied. 416 free experience. 1 token, that came from the McCampbell's medal, but we also got an Akamatsu and a Winged Legend. Turning to the personal score tab, we can see that the class-specific missions, 2 of them are not completed. That said, 1 more aerial target, and I was close to getting it, might very well have given this particular battle the 5 chevron mark. 18,905 personal points. 1 sector captured, reflecting the fact that I stuck over the command centre in the middle of the map for much of the battle. 16 aerial targets destroyed. 8,138 damage to aerial targets with 28 critical hits, and 580 capture points, and they were divided 360 for defending and 220 for attacking. If we look at the team score, we can see that was easily enough for first place. Admittedly, I only had bots on my team, and the contribution from the enemy ME-262, well, probably learning his trade. So let's take a look at the build that you'll see in the second battle replay. And I'm going to show you something interesting here, something that you may not be aware of. So if this is new to you, I hope you'll find it of some value. And what we're going to do, we're going to replace the polished skin with a lightweight airframe. And this one is in depot, and it's a piece of experimental equipment. Now, bear in mind that if I want to commit to this, that change will cost me 3 tokens. And if I'm going to pursue this idea of manoeuvrability, which is where I'm heading, you probably guessed, if we pick off a lightweight power unit, now this is on another aircraft for the moment, I'm going to grab it, and because you'd have to demount it from another aircraft and then put it, and also demount the current equipment from this aircraft, your cost would go up by another 6 tokens to a total of 9. And you may not want to do that, and I'll show you how to avoid that in a moment. Whilst we're pursuing this idea, we're going to put on a bottle for manual engine restart, and the reason for that is with a much slower aircraft, you're probably going to lose your engine, and in this particular build I think I'm going to want to restart as opposed to the improved mixture control, which is all about the speed build, particularly as I've removed the engine armour protection temporarily. Pilot, well, you'll probably want to change the pilot, and in this particular build you can probably train your fighter pilots, so let's stick in the MEP1101 pilot. And I think we're done for the moment. And if you want to take a look at the airspeed, previously I had it up at 82, it's now dropped to 75. Well, if you're really good at handling a slightly slower aircraft with a bit more manoeuvrability, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then this may be the build for you. Because look at the manoeuvrability figure. Admittedly, this is really good equipment I've put on, and it's a pilot with both acrobatics expert and aerodynamic expert skills. But the manoeuvrability has shot up from what was previously a base of 42 all the way up to 59, and that's extremely handy. So for instance, when we were looking at the spreadsheet, I warned you that under a speed build you might find it hard to outturn heavies. Well, with this build you certainly won't, and in fact there are a lot of aircraft that you'll outturn. Some of the less manoeuvrable multi-roles you'll be competitive with. And the thing about manoeuvrability is it allows you to stay on target longer, and if you can stay on target longer, you've got more time to kill an aircraft. So bear that in mind. Well, that's all well and good, I hear you cry, but no way am I going to spend 9 tokens to test a configuration that I may not want to keep. Well, there's a way of avoiding that, and that's by pressing this button here, Test. And that allows you to, I quote, perform a flight for testing the mounted equipment and consumable configuration. Experience and credit income is significantly reduced. Well, that last line is no lie. I'll show you later just by how much it's reduced, but if it avoids you spending some of your valuable tokens, this is a very worthwhile option. A word of warning: once you've done all your testing of your configuration, if you're not going to keep it, make sure that you press reset before you go anywhere else in the UI. Otherwise you will commit to this build, and in this particular case you'll lose your 9 tokens. You have been warned. So here's the map for the second configuration of the aircraft, the mobility build, manoeuvrability build if you prefer. It's the road to Rome map, and although interestingly you can't tell the variant from this replay, it looks like in the test mode the map variant is bugged, at least in replays. I can tell you it's the confrontation map, and what we have is a central airbase, a mining plant at the top of an inverted Y, and 2 garrisons at the bottom of the inverted Y. The airbase is clearly both strategically and tactically important because it's a repair airbase, 3 resources every 5 seconds plus the 3 normal extra characteristics. It can be used as a spawn point. You can change your aircraft if you want to, having been shot down, for an aircraft of the same tier, or you can fully repair your aircraft. The mining plant, as we know, conveys the 3 resources every 5 seconds plus an extra 80 resources every 2 minutes, and the garrisons just convey the 3 resources every 5 seconds. It's possible to win this battle just by having the mining plant and the airbase, and that's what you should concentrate your efforts upon, unless you're so far ahead that you can afford to go off and attempt to capture garrisons or do damage there. If we look at the order of battle, we can see that I'm in my Horten 229 with the mobility build. We have an unspecialised ME262, and we have a pair of tier 7s, a B-32 bomber which is specialised, and an F4U4 multi-role. On the enemy side they have the extra tier 8 and another unspecialised ME262, an unspecialised Horten 229, Insane in his ME109TL, and they have a single tier 7, the I-220, which nonetheless is a very good aircraft and should do well even in a battle where it's lowest tier. So, having seen that order of battle, I'm immediately going to head towards the plant and rely on the rest of my teammates to try and take the airfield. If I can secure the plant, then maybe I shall go to the airfield and try and take that. But what I want to do is make sure we have the plant and the extra resources every 2 minutes, the 80 resources. So we'll be looking for ground attackers and bombers to shoot here. Now, as I sped up to altitude, I can tell you I immediately felt how much more sluggish this plane was with this particular build. And considering it only seemed to drop down 7 rating points, it was noticeable how much more sluggish it felt, and quite surprising to me. Nevertheless, it was still plenty fast enough to get to this mining plant well in advance of the bombers, and as you can see I've gone to the right because that's the route the bombers will take to get here, and I'm looking for them now. Avoiding the flak as always. And the pair of bombers appear almost in line astern. Pity I can't shoot at 2 targets at once. Now if these were human bombers, I'd be in a lot of trouble taking these on. The defensive armament would absolutely shred me, particularly as they're both together. As they're not human bombers, I can be a little bit more liberal. begin to work over the second bomber and then realise that I'm being addressed potentially by something coming from behind me. So I turn to find out what it is, feel a spatter of bullets, and here is the manoeuvrability build in operation. I wouldn't be able to do this so easily if I'd built this aircraft for speed. In fact, it might have taken me 4 or 5 more turns to get onto the ME-262's tail. With this build, I was on it within a couple of turns. Now he's using all his boost to try and boost away going up. I can tell you actually the Horten, if you use boost, and I didn't use my engine cooling here, will actually climb faster than the ME-262. I didn't bother boosting particularly, simply because with these long range guns I'm able to keep in touch and shoot at him anyway. And as we get up to about 13,000 feet we both stall. The altitude performance on the Horten is slightly better than that of the ME-262, which I was fully aware of. I knew he'd stall before I would, and I had the advantage of him as he fell back to earth. And we have captured the plant. The airfield is still up for grabs, but after that engagement the bombers have had time to start progressing towards the plant again, and I don't want them to carpet bomb it, so I'm going to take those out. Well, certainly the one that I can see. I haven't seen the second one yet. They may have split up. The scripting does do that. The bots don't necessarily repeat the same action over and over again. They only do that when it's not useful to your team and you're losing. Down goes the bomber. And our first count of the plant. And as you can see, that count has given us 221 points and we're comfortably ahead. However, if the enemy takes the airfield, this will no longer be a comfortable battle. And they just have. Continue to work over the second B-32. And now the problem I've got is because the enemy's got the airfield, the bombers will spawn there and they'll get back to this sector much more quickly. At this point I see the a multi-role coming in. It turns out to be insane. I gamble on being able to shoot him down before he can shoot me down with his guns. I lose that gamble and I'm destroyed. So I spawn back in and everything looks extremely precarious. We're going to lose the plant. The enemy has the other 3 sectors already. I decide that I'm going to take out aircraft at this garrison because I'm very close to it. So we've got at least 1 sector that's under our belt. Find the ME-262 again. And having taken his engine, I'm now in a very good position to shoot him down. He tries to dive away. He's actually a better tactic, but then he unfortunately tries to turn instead. We've now lost the plant. I can't fly away from the heavy, though, because they'll only chase me down if I do, so I dispose of him and assess the situation. Now the Horten is certainly in a mobility build as opposed to a speed build best off fighting alongside other aircraft, unless you can sit over a plant where only bombers and ground attackers come in, for instance. So I decide to join my team in trying to take the other garrison, even though I know it's suboptimal in terms of trying to win this game. I spot the enemy Horten 229 and I chase him, and because he's turning I'm able to catch him. 3 shots to take down the Horten. I did mention it's quite fragile, although in fairness there are plenty of aircraft that the Horten will 3-shot. So we now have the garrison. We need to set about taking other sectors. The the ME-262 is determined to prove that I can't outturn him. And I'm quite happy to assert that indeed I can outturn him. And as ever, I've got aircraft in front of me. I can't turn that down. And the plant is flipped to us. And you have to credit the B-32 for that. It can only be the B-32 that's flipped that plant so easily. And I'm glad that the player was sufficiently aware of what he needed to do and indeed was able to do it. So at this point, with 3 sectors, we just need to make sure that we hang on to what we've got. It's not that important to take the airfield whilst we're in this position. The only problem is defending 3 sectors, especially when they're widely flung apart like this, can be difficult. Now what I did find is that the extra time and target that the mobility build suited me very much. And in fact, I came out of this battle thinking, I actually wish I could have 2 Hortens. One with the speed build and one with this manoeuvrability build. Having seen that there was nothing to do at the garrisons, my first thought was really to get to the plant and protect it. But since I saw an opportunity to do work at the airfield and perhaps take it, I took it. And that gave us a superiority in a battle that for a long time looked as if it wouldn't go our way, has. And I can see my team are complimenting one another, as indeed they should. People have played well. This was a game that we looked very likely to lose, and they've turned it around. So I got the little bit of bonus of the Koshadov medal there. 2 chevron battle, nothing exciting, and 13,110 personal points. But as an experiment, I thought this worked. So let's take a look at the results of this battle using the manoeuvrability build. And we can see straight away it's a 2 chevron battle or a grade 4 fighter. Now, notice here it says experience and credit income earned in a test flight is significantly reduced, as I said before. But what you don't realise is it's reduced by about a factor of 10. It's really significant. So only 27,661 credits for this battle, with a premium account bonus of about 10,000 credits there. No expenses in this particular case again because the aircraft wasn't shot down and I use prepaid consumables. Just the 651 experience and just the 32 free experience. And bear in mind, both of those are with bonuses. Koshadov medal, but I'd earned that previously in other battles, so no tokens. Personal score. We can see that all of the class-specific missions were left considerably incomplete, hence only the 2 chevron battle. Nevertheless, 13,110 personal points, 2 sectors captured, 11 area targets destroyed. Interestingly, 8,313 damage to aerial targets, which is very similar to the result in the previous battle. 28 critical hits, 320 capture points received, of which 200 were for defending and 120 were for attacking. Shot down once. In the team score, we can see that was enough for 3rd place on chevrons. If we do it by personal points, however, that's top. And over here we can see a very good contribution from the I-220, which is an excellent aircraft. Insane, also good contribution in an ME-109TL, which isn't as good an aircraft, but I like it. It's one of my favourites, and possibly let down a little bit by somebody just learning the craft of the Horten 229, which, to be fair, I'm still learning. I'm by no means particularly competent in this aircraft. There's more to come, that's for sure. So, I've shown you 2 battle replays with distinctly different builds, and I hope that's given you a flavour of how the aircraft might perform and what you might do with it were you to purchase it. So now comes the point where you have to decide, are you going to dip your hand in your wallet and part with cold hard cash for this aircraft? Well, right now and until the 1st of July, you have 2 bundles available to you. The first of which is for the aircraft and the hangar slot, with bonus items of a 100% trained crew member and a decoration set. Well, the crew member's probably neither here nor there, especially if you're going to be using the aircraft as a crew trainer. The decoration set, well, it's quite a nice livery, I will say that. It gives you 5% extra combat experience per battle. I wish it gave you 3% extra cruise speed, but it doesn't. For that bundle, you'll be asked to pay £38.45, or as it says here, €44.95, or on the US server, $54.85. There is a second bundle available to you, and this one has the aircraft, the hangar slot, 10,000 gold. So if you're short of gold, maybe this is worth considering. 5 of the steel supply crates, and personally I think if you're buying steel supply crates, you're going to be more disappointed with what you get than you are excited, but it might be of interest to you. The bonus items. The crew member in this case has 8 free skill points, and I mentioned that for my speed build I'd begun to train a pilot specifically for the Horten. Now you still may not want to do that, but if you do, this is quite nice. And the decoration set doesn't vary, it's exactly the same. And for this particular bundle, you'll be asked to pay an eye-watering £59.88, or as it says here, €69.99. But interestingly, on the NA equivalent page, it says $69.99. Now, I don't know if you are going to be able to buy this bundle for that price, but if you are, lucky for you, because you're buying it at a considerable discount to the Europeans. So, is the Horten an aircraft for you? Well, what you've got to weigh up are your playing style. Are you thoroughly conversant with high energy play styles? Even if you build this aircraft manoeuvrability, you're still going to be playing in the high energy side of things rather than the pure turn fighter side of things. And the second thing is, are you experienced at tier 8? Because if you're not experienced at that tier, I can warn you, the Horten is one of the more difficult premium aircraft to fly, and like as not, especially before you start getting it specialised and getting a really good pilot in it and really good equipment that's all ultimate level, this aircraft is going to treat you very badly unless you are one of the most magnificent talents in the game. My strong advice to inexperienced players is this is not a premium aircraft to buy at tier 8 until you are thoroughly experienced at tier 8 and the varying play styles. One further small point I'm going to notice, just as an aside, the Horten 229 was introduced to the game in February 2019 when it was a reward aircraft, and potentially you could get it for free if you completed a chain of combat missions, or at a big discount if you purchased certificates to skip over any combat missions with which you were having difficulty. It's periodically appeared in the shop since then. It's always been very expensive. These bundles are fairly typical to my memory. Interestingly, the aircraft which I mentioned was most similar to it is the TA-152, and in December 2018, approximately 2 months before the Horten appeared, the TA-152, which previously had been a magnificent aircraft, was nerfed. Specifically, the yaw rate was decreased, the heat cycle on the guns was made worse, and the firing accuracy at small manoeuvring targets, I think they mean fighters, for the cannons was also made worse. It's almost as if somebody in the World of Warplanes team was saying, we're going to have this Horten 229 coming in as a fast, long-range sniper at tier 8. We better make a space for it by making the TA-152 worse. And since then, the TA-152 has been an unpleasant aircraft to fly. Well, I hope you found something of interest in this video, and if you did, I hope that you'll come back and see more of my content in the future. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing out.